Hey everybody, good morning. It is um, Monday, March 30th, 2020. And here we are again in my studio. And welcome to Monday. I have a little different setup here today. I know you can see the camera here. I'm still waiting for that longer camera cable, but it will be here eventually. And in the meantime, you get to see my camera. I have a story for you this morning. I let's see if I can pull my brain together this morning. My story is this. I was teaching, I teach online a lot, and it is sometimes difficult for me after all these years to remember how hard it is when you're a beginner to dive into tapestry, to learn all the things about, especially if you've never done any weaving, about materials and looms and the techniques. And sometimes people, present things that are really complicated, and it's hard to get up to speed. So I want to encourage those of you who are beginners to take one day at a time. My story is that I had a student who, in the warp and weft class, this was several years ago, who was just at the beginning of the class, and she made a statement after a few weeks in the class to me, and she said, "Rebecca, I really think that learning tapestry weaving is harder than building a house." And I didn't know what she meant, and I said, "I don't think that could possibly be true." But a couple of weeks later, I was teaching at the Southern California Hand Weavers Guild in Los Angeles, and she was there. She was in the class, and she brought me this. Let's see if you can see this little house. It turns out that she is a silversmith, and she literally was saying that it's harder to, sorry, I'm having trouble orienting things. There you go. Harder to build a house, harder to weave tapestry than build a house. She's a metalsmith, and so she builds all kinds of beautiful things like this. And so for her, of course, this was far easier than learning tapestry, and probably for a construction expert who actually builds houses, it would be easier than learning tapestry. So my story is just a reminder to me. I actually keep this on my loom, the loom that is over there, the hairspill rug loom that I use a lot. I leave it hanging on there to remind myself as a teacher that learning beginning tapestry is not easy. And I forget what beginner's mind is like. Not beginner's mind. I forget what it's like to be new at something and to have something feel so hard. So this reminds me of that. And also in my own weaving practice, as I look at it as I'm weaving, that it's okay to try new things. It's okay if it's hard. And eventually you'll build your house one little piece at a time. Things that seem hard at the beginning get easier. And I think that also applies to our current situation in the world today. That seems super, super hard. There are some moments where it just feels insane and really, really, really hard. And so maybe it's like building a little house. I don't know. You learn what you can, and when your world is suddenly different, you take it on one bit at a time. So that's my story for today. Remember the house. And I will try to remember that many of you are new to this, and learning a whole lot of stuff at once can be hard. So just hang in there, and one step at a time we'll get there. You all are popping on. Thank you for coming, everybody. So Audrey says I got the date wrong. Is it really Monday? It's Monday, March 30. Did I not say that? I could be wrong. Good morning from Canada, and Wendy and Jennifer from SoCal. Vancouver. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Michelle. Buenos dias. Hello, Harlan, Louisville. It is a great time for weaving. Alabama. It's really fun for me to see where y'all are from. So thank you for putting that in here. Joanne's here from Michigan, Eastern Canada. Hi, Karen. Good morning, Sarah from Idaho. Good morning, Mandy, St. Louis. Marlena from Texas, Michelle from Texas, Maine, Florida. You're welcome, Alice. I'm glad you're here. I remember Penland well, and I hope you're doing great. Good morning, Karen. Anne from Ohio. Kathy says her saffron loom is out for delivery. That's very exciting. Hopefully it'll come today, Kathy. Nan, Bainbridge Island, Washington. Okay, good evening, Matilda. Thank you for coming from the Netherlands. I was hoping that some people in Europe would be able to jump on because I think it is evening there for you all. Harlan makes a good point. So I'm talking about Little House and how hard it is to learn new stuff. And he said something about especially hard on perfectionists. And Harlan, I hear you there. I am also a fairly big perfectionist, and it's tough to let that go. So let's all try together to remind each other it's okay. Let's just not be so hard on ourselves, especially right now. My gosh, you guys, we cannot be hard on ourselves. The world is completely turned upside down. Hi, Linda. So glad you're here. Maris, Kathleen, Leslie, back from Vermont. Oh, okay. So Missy says the header for the video says Sunday the 29th. I'm sorry. I will change that in the final production. I don't want to change it now, but thank you for orienting me, you guys. I will fix it so you can find it in the future. Sharon, thank you for being part of that essential workforce. I'm glad you're out there in the trenches. Good afternoon, Linda from Mystic, Connecticut. It is afternoon there. Vashon Island. Oh my gosh, you guys. Ellen. Maris got her Mirax Zach. That's so great. Hi, Ellen from Michigan and Victoria from Florida. And Karen from Virginia, California, Georgia. Yay, you guys. I'm glad you're here. I hope you have a project you want to work on today, if not right this moment. I set up a different loom today, and let me show you this loom. This is one I have shown before. You may remember this loom from a blog post or something that I did earlier this year. This was my piece for January, for my intention for the year. So in January, I started this, and my word for the year was steady. And I can't tell you what a great word that was to choose because I need it more than anything else. January and February were nutso for me. And now we're in March, and I had no idea March was going to be such a crazy thing. So steady is a good word, and I felt like it was time to finish this piece. This is a fringeless warp, so I have this much more to go. Here's the top of the warp, and here is the top of the loom. I apologize for the yoga props, but it seemed like the best way to keep this loom from moving. It's a yoga mat and yoga blocks. And I will show you a little weaving on this thing. You know, Mandy, that's a good point. Kids are used to learning everything for the first time. So here's what Mandy said. Kids are used to learning everything for the first time. Adults are used to comparing themselves to people who've done a skill for years and years. So let's just be kids again with our weaving and fiber, whatever we're doing. If you're new at it, just be a kid again for a little while. Thank you, Mandy. because it's true, we compare ourselves to other people who have been doing stuff for a very long time. I've been weaving tapestry since 2004, and I have been weaving, working in tapestry full time since 2014. So I get a lot more practice than some of you. And I have a lot to learn, and a lot of people still teach me things that I need to know. But don't compare yourself to people who've been doing it for a long time. Just pretend you're a kid again and you're having fun. Yay, Debbie got her saffron loom last Friday. Hi, Kate from cloudy California. It's not cloudy in California very often, is it? So this particular loom, I started at the bottom here. This is the bottom of the Fringeless, and I did a little messing around, and then I wove this word in January. And then things got crazy and I didn't come back to it. And I'm back here because I need to find a little steadiness. And I have even written down my plan for this. So if I get flustered talking to you guys, I can look at what my plan is. So on this lovely loom, and if you are in the Fringeless online class, or you've learned to do four-selvedge warping, the four-selvedge stuff will make sense. I just want to say that this is a fringeless warp because, again, on yet another warp, I'm showing you the warps are doubled. And that's what happens in the fringeless. Let's see. So in this case, every loom, I use different looms a little bit differently. So in this particular case, I have an open shed here, which is dictated by this bar I have at the top of the loom. So that bar is about maybe a 1/4 inch. I actually think it might be a bar from a Mirex loom. Thanks, Mirex. That holds this shed open just enough that I can just slide my fingers in. So there's the open shed. And the other shed I am picking. And you'll remember on that other piece I was working on yesterday, I was using a shed stick like this to pick the shed. That's because it was such a fine shed. It was 16 ends per inch. This is only 8, which is a great shed for just hand picking. So I can just quickly and easily pick up the shed like this and put in my weft. So my resident ergonomics expert, Anne, thank you, Anne. Angling the work is important. So she's giving me a thumbs up for using these yoga blocks to angle the work. And I think that she's right about that. Angling the work so you can see it and for comfort is important. And with small looms, it can be tricky, and it can mean that you need to use a pillow or a prop if it's on your lap, or an easel, an artist box easel that you can put the loom on, and the front can slide back and forth, up and down. It can be really useful. I'm doing 3 sequences of each of these colors, and I hope I made this weft long enough, because what I want to do is splice these ends back together in the middle. I have actually changed the color here. This is slightly different than this one, and I will change it as I go up. So it's an example of how I might plan something if I was feeling like planning something that I did actually plan out. I'm using these 3 colors for these little stripes. My idea being here just to put some stripes up to the end of this piece using a Fibonacci series. So hi, Ersa, welcome from an hour east of LA. Can't remember the name of your town, Ursula, I'm sorry. Okay, now look at that. I can tell right there that I screwed that up. Can you see that? See how I have two things going over that? That's a mistake. Those are the kind of things when you've been doing this a little longer that you'll see quickly. And they're the kind of things you won't see when you're new to this, and it's okay. It'll get easier. I was trying to do a splice and that's what I screwed up. Also, under pressure, I'm much more likely to mess it up. So if I still don't get it right, I apologize. I feel like I still got something wrong there. Yep, still wrong. Okay, yeah, Kate says also, I messed up the date, you guys. Sorry about that. Don't know how I did that, but I will fix it. You probably cannot see through my hands. I will try to do better with where I put my hands. Right, did I get it that time? So now I'm looking to see that I have over, under, over, under. That's a good way to check if what you're doing is what you really need to do. This one is under, this one's over, this one's under, that one's over. So this is a valley thread, this is a hill thread. Looks like I finally got it there. Yay. Pressure, man. Hi, Donald. Welcome from New Mexico. Great to have you here. Airsil says she's in Upland, California. No one knows where it is. I bet people in California know where it is. Hi, Shari from Grand Junction. Yeah, great question, Harlan. So what I was just doing was splicing those ends together, and I'm again working from the front on this piece. And Harlan wanted to know, does splicing take care of loose ends, thus avoiding the need to sew them in at some point? It depends on the yarn you're using. I will cut that splice I just did off when I take this off the loom. After I've woven on top of it, I will cut it. And that's because this yarn I'm using is super fuzzy. This is Harrisville Kohler Singles. It's not super fuzzy, but it's grabby. Unlike the, I don't have a Weaver's Bazaar here right now, but the Weaver's Bazaar fine and medium yarns are really slick. They're worsted spun, so they're more tightly spun. And those ends, I have stopped cutting those off because right at the surface because they will pop to the front. A lot of people don't cut their ends off at all. Their backs are not clean. They have lots of ends on them, and that's also a fine way to go. Diane, thank you for saying it. She said she's so glad that I make mistakes too. Gives me permission. Back to being a kid sometimes. Absolutely. I make mistakes all the time. Yesterday, I had to pull out like a 1/4 inch of that thing I was working on yesterday. So, and it wasn't even because I was doing it on camera. It was later. So I make mistakes all the time. We all do. And maybe a mistake is just a learning curve. Oh, Kit wanted to see my beater. I think I was using this one. This is the Magpie beater. I was talking some about beaters yesterday. This is another one by them. And I do have a whole video on my YouTube channel about beaters. There's also a blog post that talks about it. So if you just go to my blog and search for Tapestry, it's probably Tapestry beater. It might be Tapestry fork. This is by Magpie Woodworks. So magpiewoodworks.com, I think. But if you search for Magpie Woodworks, you'll find it. Kathleen, do you always use meet and separate even on narrow pieces like this? No, I don't. And if I'm using a yarn like Weaver's Bazaar, like I was just talking about, that is very much more worsted spun and slicker. On a piece this big, I would still use 2 pieces with Weaver's Bazaar probably, but on a narrower one, I've done a lot of pieces that are only about 2 inches wide. And I would use one thread back and forth, just because with that yarn that's not as fuzzy, you can really see the relay where the two things come together. The reason though for using two butterflies in this case is that I don't want a bunch of tails on the edges. I want them in the middle. So that's why I'm doing that. Also, using more than one butterfly keeps your edges straight. Someone was commenting that my edges are so straight, part of that is because once I get past something that's a couple inches wide, I'm using more than one butterfly. That is all about weft tension. There's also a couple of videos about weft tension on this channel, which is just about how much weft goes into the piece. I'm going to do a split weft here. So these lines are really nice and straight, and that's because I'm using this split weft thing. And oops, I forgot I was also doing another little outline. Okay. So this is creating some tails on the edge with just one thread. Not too hard to needle in, which is what I will do with these end threads. Let's see. Hopefully you can see that. You can probably see that better than I want you to be able to see that. So you'll see when I make a mistake before I will. So that's giving me a split weft outline, which is two wefts in the same shed, one of each color, which splits that little bubble that tapestry weaving makes. There's a whole video about this in the Warp and Weft class if you're in that class. And I was smart enough to prepare my weft bundle. This has two of this purple color and one of the color before, because I'm shifting the colors, doing a little color gradation. See, I told you, Ursula, that someone from California would know where Upland was. Ursula, it's not a silly question. She's asking this yarn. This yarn is the Harrisville Color Singles. It only comes in undyed. So anytime I'm using that yarn, I dyed it myself, which is true in this case also. Oh, see what I just did? How many of you saw me do that? I was doing a split weft outline, and then I went right on to a color instead of the outline I wanted. So in this one, I want two sequences. Yeah, Joanne, she's asking about that hot flash piece I was working on. I'm going to bring that back tomorrow or the next day, Joanne. So I will talk about that then. She wants to know more about the spacing. Actually, watch my blog this week too, because there have been a lot of questions about that. So I might actually write some more details on the blog, which would allow me to be more clear about what I was doing there. Shari wants to know if I've ever had a conversation with Harrisville about dyeing this yarn. I haven't. I don't know that. So I don't know if it would make the kind of yarn I would want to use. The reason I say that is because Harrisville dyes in the fleece. So everything they do, the fleece is dyed before the yarn is made, which means that that's why their yarns are pretty heathered, which makes some really beautiful combinations. And maybe it would work great in a singles yarn. I just find that the undyed yarns are much smoother, which I really like for tapestry. And those of you who've used Harrisville for a while, like Highland, know that sometimes it's just not a completely consistent diameter. And that doesn't matter if you have more experience, but because you can adjust for it. But it is a little frustrating to have the yarn not the same size. it wouldn't be a bad thing to ask them. It's not something that I would use, but other people totally might. So, and yes, you're probably right that it would fly off the shelves. I also would love to have a broader color palette, which I don't know if they're possible that they could produce that, but yes, Sharon, I was making little pigtails at the selvages, and because these are just one strand instead of three, it'll be fairly easy to. You can see I have pigtails on each of these. It'll be fairly easy to stitch those in. I would not want pigtails with the full weft bundle like that on the selvages because it would make a real mess. So here I'm going to do another splice, and I'm going to do it on the front this time so you can see, and so I won't screw it up. When I'm weaving on my other loom, I weave from the back, and so the splices are always on the front. So a lot of you, if you're in the warp and weft class, that's how you see me weave, and you would see a splice like this, and then I would just keep going because this would be the back. So you can do a splice like that where each of the things are overlapping, and then just throw it to the back. Especially with a dark color, you won't see the little places where the thing is crossing over. Get a little bit tight there. One thing you get used to is looking at your warp spacing. Can you see how it's narrower here? That's about weft tension. Those warps have come together a little more than I would like them to. So I'm trying to get them to spread out by putting a little more weft in there. Okay, now I'm ready for the piece that I had so smartly prepared. Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry. Okay, so the split weft outline, I have the brown in there, and I need the purple. More weft in there. I don't need as much in there. I probably don't need to wrap that edge. That decision's somewhat random, so I don't really have an answer to that. So I said earlier that I was using the Fibonacci sequence. So what that means, the Fibonacci sequence has to do with the golden mean. And if you Google Fibonacci, which I always spell wrong, but I think it is Fibonacci, as Leslie has spelled it in the chat, you'll get tons of information about it. It's a sequence where you add the last number to the one before. So for example, if I start with 1, which you do, you start with 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 8 is 13. That goes on and on. It's related to pi. It's related to the golden mean. It's related to things that humans find very pleasing in nature. And I use it a lot to play with things like stripe sequences. So in this case, I'm going to keep the brown. I'm going to do the Fibonacci. So this was my unit for 1, which was actually 1 sequence plus the outlines. And I had a second one. So here I did 2 sequences plus the outlines. And so then my next one will be 3, and then 5, and then 8, and I probably won't be able to do more than that. And I'm keeping the colored ones the same. You could vary both of them. Just a way to play with stripes. So, and here is my picking up again. And when I'm picking the warp with my fingers, I usually don't do more than like an inch at a time. So there's 4. This is 8 ends per inch, so that's an inch's worth. And here's my little problem area. Just try to get a little more weft in there. I'm doing 3. I had to make notes so I wouldn't forget. 3 sequences of the colors. And again, Oh, Sharon, I didn't know that. There's a novel called The Golden Mean by Annabelle Lyon. I'm going to look that up. Thanks. Ursula wrote out this Fibonacci sequence for you guys, so it will be clearer. If you look at the chat right now, you'll be able to see. I believe you'll be able to see Ursula has written it out. Thank you, Ursula. Okay, this time I'll do the splice one more time the same way, just so you can see it if you haven't seen that before. Wendy is right. The Fibonacci sequence, if you Google the golden mean or the divine proportion, you'll find lots of information about this whole subject. It's all related. And here, I'm going to pull that up so you can see it. It's all related, and it's an interesting thing to use in art for design. I use it for the proportions of my piece, the outer dimensions, a lot of time. In this case, that's not true, but so there's my splice. All right. Let's see if I can get one more stripe in here. Hi, Jessica. I'm glad you made it. Jessica is she runs the Weaving Rainbow, which is a great online shop. They have that little arched loom I keep showing, which I kept thinking was right here, but I don't see it. She has a guy who makes those for her, and they're really fun. She also has some new little looms, kind of like the Hokit loom, that are made out of like logs. They're really lovely. So I haven't tried one of those yet, but check out her website. Okay, so I have one of my split weft in here, and I'm trying to make my brain work. I'm going back to this. So in the same shed, and again, I'm putting this in the middle. Donald says, who would have thought math was important for weaving? So true. It is important. Especially if you're doing like draft weaving. There's a lot of math in that. Okay. Now, back to this. I hope you all have been able to do some of your own weaving if you're not out in the trenches, and also that the weather is getting warmer and you can go and weave outside. I really like weaving on these pipe looms, picking the shed at 8 ends per inch. It's really calming somehow. This just simple manipulating it with your fingers. I also like doing fringeless warps on really long looms like this. This loom is it's probably 2.5 feet long, because the longer warp makes it so much easier to work on. This is why those of you who use Murex looms and you like to keep the loom collapsed because you want to save warp, if you allow yourself to waste a little warp and make the loom longer, like extend the Murex even if you're not going to use all the warp, you'll find that the weaving's actually a lot easier. Just give it a try. Warp is fairly inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. One of those cotton seine twine 12/6 cones has like 1,800 yards, and if you're just warping little looms, that'll last you forever. Okay. Again, trying to get that little area to spread out. Okay, so what am I doing on this one? This is the 3 sequence. 3 sequence stripe. Wow. So here's the 3rd sequence. It's tempting to put this weft all the way across, but I find when picking the warp like this, or when using a bobbin, I do better with my selvages if I do about 1 inch at a time. Ah, stabbed my beater into my sweater. Okay, is that 3 sequences? It's okay to do this. Look, I can push it up. Now when I really need a bobbin, I don't see one. Here's one. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I do have 3 sequences, which means I made this longer than I need. Oh, thank you, Linda. Okay, so Linda says that Magpie Woodworks store website is temporarily closed due to the coronavirus. I had not heard that. I'm gonna do this one like I would usually do it because I don't like the little crossovers. So all a splice is overlapping. Some tapestry weavers never ever do this and probably think I'm nutso, but this is something that I learned from my mentor, James Kohler, and I like it. So there's 3 sequences. So you can see I have 1. If this is a unit of 1, this is a unit of 1. This is 2 sequences, and this is 3 sequences. And that is going to be my Fibonacci series. Good morning from Brooklyn. Masena. I might be Masena. I might be saying that wrong, but beautiful name. Does the manipulation of wool yarn with one's fingers not make the yarn fuzzy? Marlena, good question. That depends a lot on what the yarn is. This yarn is already pretty fuzzy, and I am, let's see if I can show you. Let me just use a longer piece just to, so if I am doing something like this, where this is the closed shed and the shed would be tight, it would be best if I pulled the yarn through with the shed open so that I'm not dragging the yarn like this through the shed. I find that at 8 ends per inch with Harrisville Kohler singles, it doesn't make that much difference. But yes, there are definitely yarns. Like I would never pull hand spun through a shed like this. If I was using hand spun, it would be wound on a bobbin. And that's to protect the yarn. The hand spun, my hand spun, probably not other people's hand spun, but my hand spun tends to be a little dicey, fragile maybe. And also depending on what it depends on what the fiber is. If I was using a really like a Lincoln or a really long staple yarn, it wouldn't be as important. But sometimes if I'm have woven with hand spun with something that's softer, like let's see, if I have woven, trying to run my thing. If I've woven with something that's softer with hand spun, like maybe BFL or merino or something, I would definitely use a bobbin. So it depends on the yarn, whether pulling it through the shed is going to abrade the yarn too much or not. And also how wide a distance you're pulling it through. If you are finding you're doing that a lot, use a butterfly on a loom that'll work for, or a bobbin. Harlan's asking about warp. Let me turn this back on. This particular warp is the same thing I was using yesterday. Maybe. I think this is 26 cotton seine twine. I use 12/6 cotton seine twine or 12/9 cotton seine twine at 8 ends per inch if it's not doubled like this. Cotton seine twine is amazing. I highly recommend it for tapestry forever. Every Abusan, I just use this now since I was able to go on a tapestry tour in France last year. Every Abusan loom I saw on the entire tour was using cotton seine twine, and I was so excited. It's a cabled warp. Seine or sign is S-E-I-N-E, and they sell it lots of places, but any place that sells Scandinavian yarn will probably have it. Eugene Textile Center, Glamulkra USA, the Woolery has it, Favstuga has it, the Lone Star Loom Room has it. They label it differently, but it is cotton seine twine, and you'll probably see 12/6 as their most popular thing. It comes in colors. Absolutely the best warp out there, in my opinion. Have a good day at work, Sharon. Thank you for being out there and keeping the world running. Barbara asks if this is 1/2 inch copper. I can't remember. It's whatever is in my loom plans on my blog. I think it's it's 1/2 inch. It's absolutely 1/2 inch copper. If the loom were much bigger than this, it would need to be thicker. So copper is soft. Great. You guys, thanks for coming. Yes, Donald, 12/6. Is that what you'd recommend for tapestry? I recommend whatever size works best for the set you're working at. I have a love of a very thin fabric, and so 12/6 is a thin warp. If you like a bigger bead on your tapestry, like you like the warp ribs to show more, use a fatter warp. Tommy Scanlon, for example, I think often uses 12/12 at 8 ends per inch, which is twice the size of 12/6. So there's a wide range you can use depending on how you want the tapestry to look and how thick you want the fabric to be. So yeah, hang on there out there in Brooklyn. New York, Connecticut's getting it rough. I think we're all going to experience some of this in the big cities, at least, the longer we go. Those of you who live rurally are already social distancing most of the time, so you are the lucky ones. I am going to run now, and I will bring back either this project or another one on a small loom. Maybe I'll break out the saffron tomorrow, and I will bring back that other project later this week and show you what I've done with it. So Michelle asked where I get my cotton seine twine. Look at Eugene Textile Center. That'd be the first place I would go to. It's in Eugene, Oregon. They own Glamulkra USA, Glimarka USA.com. They supply most of the people in the nation. So if you want to just get it right from the people who ship it in from Egypt or Sweden, Eugene Textile Center. Lots of other places have it. If you buy yarn somewhere else, they might also have it. Okay, I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming. Maybe my new cable will come so I can raise the camera a little bit. And we'll do something new tomorrow. I'm glad that it's helpful to meet up. And actually, if you want to use the hashtag that's right here, changetheshed, if you use Instagram especially or Twitter, use that hashtag and we can see what everybody is weaving. If you are on Facebook, you're welcome to pop images onto my business page, which is Rebecca Mezoff Tapestry Studio. And depending on how many we see, I can even pop a few up into the recording. If you're willing to share, just let me know, and I can just have a, hey, this is what people are working on. So thank you so much. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Those of you who can come, please, please stay safe and support each other from afar in any way that you can. Okay. Happy tapestrying. And y'all are the best.